The topic of the fireside is what it took to scale AI. And we are very, very lucky indeed to have Sahar Kayhani join us, who's the Chief Product Officer for Global Relay, which is a fantastic Vancouver success story, just another reason to be Vancouver proud. And it's going to be moderated by Rob Goehring, who is the CEO of AI in BC and has a startup of his own in the AI space, which is going exceedingly well. So fantastic to have him moderate the discussion. So please, if you both join me on the stage, give him a warm round of applause, please. Thanks, Rob.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, thank you, everyone. I think this has been a very interesting, thought-provoking day so far. We've had the opening introduction from Mark, which I think it really set the stage very, very well for all the crazy things that are happening in AI, and it's truly crazy. For those who are technical in the audience, it was just, I think, February 5th, February 6th that the Opus 4.6 model came down, changed a lot of things around how you write code. Hearing from Salim in terms of all of the the incredible moonshots that are happening, and I will recommend anyone who's not listening to the Moonshots podcast, he kind of mentioned it very briefly. If you want to be uncomfortable, as we talked about, and learn, I've had a number of times where I've had to pause it while I'm driving because I had to really sit and think about something. The previous panel talked about a lot of opportunities across companies, and now we are here to talk with Sahar about the amazing things going on at Global Relay. So we've got a number of questions we're going to kind of go through, about 25 minutes or so. But Sahar, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Talk a bit about Global Relay, get everyone in the audience who may or may not know about the company, they should know about the company, to learn a bit more.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Sahar Kayhani, and I'm the Chief Product Officer at Global Relay. Global Relay is a market-leading vendor in the space of regulatory compliance for regulated industries. Mainly, we serve financial services. We have many of the global banks as our customers. What we do is we keep their business records from electronic communications perspective because they're required to supervise that and do basically various different levels of e-discovery, legal, as well as supervision functions with that data. As you can imagine, the massive amount of electronic communications just growing over the last little while has presented a very challenging problems that how do we do this effectively, and hence the story of AI. Global Relay has been in this business for over 26 years, and we are really glad to be kind of pioneering in the space of AI for solving some of these problems.
Awesome, thank you. So back in September, your CEO Warren was at the All In conference. We brought a huge, amazing group of BC companies there, and he went on stage and said that Global Relay is all in on AI, which was appropriate for the conference. What does that really mean, for you, the company, and your teams?
So it's definitely an interesting times from the perspective of technology. Global Relay at heart is a technology company. So our technology grows and AI is growing rapidly every day. We made a huge investment on basically building the right teams to help us solve the problems, the real world problems with AI, as well as investing in various different infrastructure required from AI perspective, like what is an AI-ready data center. Global Relay, we own our own private data center here in Vancouver. So it was very much an investment into all aspects of the stack, from teams, from infrastructure, from technology, as well as leadership position of the company to help our customers utilize AI efficiently in the areas that we serve them.
That's amazing. And Mark kind of talked a bit about it, and Sue and I were talking about incrementalism versus making big leaps. That's a very large leap. Again, you guys spent a lot of time and energy and effort to basically reimagine a lot of what you're doing. Now, you've been a product leader at Global Relay for about 10 years now, and you've been Chief Product Officer since 2023. I think, tell the audience a bit about how AI has changed how you manage your product, your engineering, and what that means from a day-to-day standpoint for your work.
I think in the past, before, obviously AI in various different forms existed for a long time now, machine learning, deep learning, and now the next frontier, which is basically large language models, Gen AI. So for us, we started investing in AI early, but it wasn't to the level of quality accuracy that it is today. It was very different a few years ago. Even 18 months ago, the large language models couldn't function the way they're functioning today. So for us, we've done two things as a business. The first is, how do we utilize AI to run our own business more efficiently? Being a technology vendor, one of the promise of AI, one of the first things that it can solve is it can help engineers code faster, test faster, build faster prototypes, and that's at the heart of what we do every day. So in our own business, we started utilizing some of those AI technologies in this space, as well as really thinking through how can AI help solve some of the business problems we basically serve for our customers. In our space, the growth of data, it was kind of referenced earlier today in the discussion, where the expansion of data that's produced across the globe is a very serious problem when it comes to surveilling this data, because now you have massively more amount of data from e-com's perspective you need to surveil, and then there is the data points from structured or unstructured data that help contribute investigations in this space. So for us to reimagine what would a workflow be like when customers adopt AI in this space for us as a technology vendor. So we try to do both of these things from solution perspective, as well as our own business. How do we utilize AI?
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I'm sure a lot of you deal with both structured and unstructured data, and I think it's been quite amazing what the tools and technologies can actually do with the unstructured data. Over the last 6 to 12 months, it was very hard. I remember I was at a conference a couple years ago, and one of the Microsoft folks used the term, just garbage bag your data because you'll be able to figure it out down the road. So I think that's an interesting kind of innovation. Kind of to that point, we've talked about this, and every company now is talking about being AI native in many ways. I'm going to ask maybe the anti-question. To be AI native, what did you have to stop doing in the organization, and what was sort of the uncomfortable part of all of that?
I think there is one aspect of AI native. First of all, before how do you stop? What do you need to stop to be AI native? I think there is two different things that needs to be considered when you want to be AI native. First, from the top to bottom, there's got to be a strategy to adopt AI in the firm, which is really important. The leadership in the company, the executive leadership in the company need to understand how the outcome of AI is really enabling them to run a better business. So that's a mandate and strategy from top to bottom, as well as, in my opinion, from bottom to up. Every single employee at the firm, when they understand and feel more comfortable with AI, then they can start adopting AI in their day-to-day work, and therefore, from both aspects, now you have an AI native business. It was kind of easier for us because first we do have a visionary CEO who looks at, okay, well, how do I run a better business? How do I take advantage of the technology I'm trying to sell into the market to run my own business? As well as, because of the fact that we are a technology company with a massive team, basically, of AI engineers, data scientists, etc., we had a faster training internally on what utilization of AI in Global Relay as a business is going to look like. So we had an advantage of basically being a technology vendor in this space. So we did try to look at it from the perspective of how it can transform our business. I think one very important aspect for a lot of businesses that we actually serve with our products is also, if you want to just adopt AI into the existing workflows and processes that you're running as a business, you're not utilizing it to the maximum. AI is transforming some of the processes, transforming some of the workflows. As we kind of discussed the digital co-worker, it is transforming the teams. So we can't just inject AI into an existing structure, existing process and workflow. You have to rethink that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting. You're talking about these business transformation challenges. It still comes down to the people and the vision and being able to actually make it happen. So maybe pivoting a little bit into some maybe a little nerdy things on the product side. Your platform is very complex. It does a lot for regulated industry customers. You've talked a lot about, from a product standpoint, recently adopting chain of thought reasoning in the platform. So maybe if you can briefly describe that for folks who may or may not understand that, but talk a bit about why that was such a profound change in your product.
So when we started envisioning what an AI, or basically large language model enabled AI surveillance is going to look like, we wanted it to be super efficient in what it does from cost perspective, as well as be comprehensively identifying the right risk. In the space we are in, we have a risk taxonomy that customers are trying to basically find if they can flag that type of risk in their organization. So for us, it was about, because we're looking at unstructured data, there's an email chain between 20 people with a conversation going on for days. How do I find if someone is trying to abuse the market? How do I find if someone is doing insider trading? How do I find if this is actually a customer that's trying to complain? So these are some of the examples of the risks that we're trying to identify. So for us, we needed AI to be able to read the whole thing, understand the conversation, and reason through the conversation to flag what needs to be flagged in this. So the chain of thought is bringing two different aspects, and I do think it's very applicable to other use cases of AI in various different businesses. First of all, when AI explains the chain of thought reasoning behind doing something, whatever that is, whether it's risk identification to any other process, it is actually teaching the humans in the loop why this decision was made. So over time, the teams are more knowledge, the teams are basically getting some free training about their jobs, what it is that AI is trying to do. So that's one aspect of adopting such a vision. The other aspect is where we are, especially in the regulated industry, and I'm sure for everyone in this room is super important. AI needs to be regulated. A bunch of firms are basically required to regulate their use cases of AI, as well as from various other perspectives, we all want to make sure AI is regulated. So for AI to explain what it is doing and is happening, oh, this is my chain of thought. I looked at this part of the message, then I looked at that other part of the message. Overall, then I think, oh, someone is actually doing something bad here. There's a risk here. So for AI to be able to explain itself, it's very important because it gives that assurance that, okay, well, it's to the regulators that AI knows what it's doing.
No, that's great. And I think, so kind of pulling on that thread a little bit, we've talked about agentic AI today. We've talked a bit about, a single agent being able to do a whole bunch of things. Mark's got his Claude bot doing a whole bunch of stuff. It's incredible. And when you add multi-agent capabilities, and they're making copies of themselves and spawning and working with each other, when you look at agentic AI capabilities with memory, with the ability to do their own things, you mentioned compliance a moment ago. Talk to me about that. Like, if you imagine these agents spawning and doing all sorts of things, how do you manage for that? How do you make sure that in your platform you can surveil all of these things that are happening with multi-agent models?
Yeah, so if you consider AI agents as employees, we kind of touched on digital workers, etc. In a similar fashion that human employees are supervised from various different aspects, especially in the industries that we serve. In a similar fashion, if I have an AI agent doing some research for me and providing investment advice, that needs to be monitored. That AI needs to be recorded, monitored. So basically, we're getting to a point where AI is surveilling AI. So that's pretty important for us to put guardrails around AI agents, as well as being able to exactly have the transparency, knowing what AI agents are doing. The approach in Global Relay is everything that we utilize AI services for, every part of the platform, every time AI touches the data, every time it's making a decision, there is an audit trail for every single one of these things. Everything is logged. In addition to that, every time, if you consider chatbots, for example, the usual ChatGPT style conversational chatbots, every time humans are interacting with these chatbots, every single conversation is also recorded from regulatory perspective and basically undergoes the same surveillance, risk identification, and e-discovery processes that regular human conversations go to. So from that perspective, it's almost as if we are treating AI in a similar fashion that we're treating humans in this space.
Yeah, and very complex. I mean, again, those of us that have run into context window memory issues and things where the models you're using ChatGPT or what have you, and it kind of all of a sudden forgets things. This is incredibly difficult, what you're doing to kind of stitch the reasoning and the understanding across, probably petabytes of data, I'm sure, or more.
Yes, yeah, for sure. We're excited about the challenges every day.
Yes, I'm sure. We talked earlier about the challenges in compliance and regulatory frameworks around the world. Why do you think that is in Europe and the Middle East region?
I think it's a lot of it perhaps is outcome focused. As regulators in those regions and gradually in North America as well, see the outcomes that AI can bring to the surveillance programs in the firms, or to compliance, to any other program, frankly. They see the outcome of what wasn't achievable before and what it is achievable with AI now. They don't want to be blocking any of these technologies, but because they're afraid of AI. They are very open to, first of all, understanding what AI does from technology perspective, so then know how to regulate it and be open to firms adopting AI to be basically mainly using AI for such programs. I do think Global Relay, we interact with a lot of regulators, whether it's from Europe, FCA, SEC, FINRA, in North America, we interact with them a lot. So on a weekly basis, they do come to us, they kind of understand the technology first. So there is various different demos, training sessions we run for them, so they get comfortable and be able to trust AI to basically do such programs.
And it's very interesting. I mean, I think for a lot of organizations that are early in their AI journey or accelerating, if you are a global company, the sort of interoperability of these compliance frameworks is really complex. A product that is built to comply with a compliance framework in one jurisdiction, may be very, very different. Even in the EU AI Act and the UK approach are different, and you have to really adopt to them. So that's phenomenal. Again, when we were chatting, there was a neat a quote I think you Global Relay had on the blog, that AI is a shiny new Ferrari. And I think we all probably feel that. It's, you go into a room and you're like, wow, this thing can do all these cool things, but really, can it? So, what do you think separates really a firm that gets real value out of AI versus the firms that just end up with an expensive pilot that maybe didn't go as well as it could have?
I think putting some thought into the value the firms are trying to get out of AI. What is it that they want to get from outcome perspective? Let's say in our business is I want to be able to run a 50% more effective surveillance program with 50% less people. So you have some numbers and metrics that you're moving towards, as well as understanding that AI might transform your teams. AI might transform your processes. In our world, historically, before all these transformation of AI, customers had massive compliance teams. These teams, their job on a day-to-day basis was to log into a system and look at 99.9% false positives. They would look at the message, they're like, okay, well, just because this word was used in this context is actually not a risk at all. So basically, they would look at a pile of data to find maybe one risk or nothing on a daily basis that's worth for the next level escalations to look at. So now with AI, these alerts that are being produced is so much more meaningful that is transforming their teams. They don't need that massive number of teams to look at 99.9% false positives anymore. Instead, they need some knowledgeable workers. When they look at that data, they're like, okay, yes, I understand the regulations around this. So yes, someone needs to look at, or we need to do some actions with an individual that, let's say, causes risk. So it is transforming some of their workflows. So if they look at how can I just utilize AI without changing my teams or changing my processes, that might turn into an expensive pilot that didn't actually get the right outcome for them.
Right. And so further, again, you work with a lot of regulated industries, and there are a lot of regulations and compliance frameworks. Do you have a sense of where you expected the next challenging rule or next compliance framework to come from? Is it financial? Is it cyber? Is it elsewhere?
Couple of things we've seen with the regulators. First, because the AI programs are very effective in this space, the regulations will become tighter. The expectations go a little higher because previously, looking at 24 hours of voice data produced by traders, just listening to the recording in hopes of finding something was very ineffective. But now AI is transcribing that almost perfectly. Agents can actually look at the transcription, even do the tone of voice. This is all happening with no human at all. And then eventually, if they find something, the AI agent finds something, they're like, someone needs to look at it. So now the regulator is like, no one can actually make an excuse anymore that how many people do you want me to hire to listen to all these voice calls? Now they're like, okay, well, AI technology can do this in a matter of a few seconds. So the expectations are going a little higher from that perspective when it comes to that. The other aspect that we've seen regulators becoming a little more strict about is previously looking at personal conduct, HR matters, etc., in the financial services was not that emphasized before. It was all about market conduct. But now when they look at AI agents, how smart they are, how they can actually read communications, listen to communications, and identify personal conduct issues, it is becoming a mandated part of the regulation. So they are tightening things because now they understand the scope of what AI can do.
Wow. Again, a lot of complex data. Earlier, Mark and Celine both talked about Mythos. And I think KPMG, if you haven't seen it, KPMG produced some really great materials on sort of Claude Mythos model. It's on the website, right, Walter, somewhere on the website. So it's really good. This is right in your world, right? I think this whole situation. What has the Mythos conversation done at Global Relay? Is this something you're already ahead of? Are you're hearing it from customers? What is sort of your buyer base concerned about, and how has that changed for you?
I don't think it necessarily changes or makes people afraid of adopting AI in their firms. I think it's mostly about recognizing the smarter AI gets in helping us do good things, it's also getting so much smarter in helping bad actors do bad things really fast. So for us, it's not about, customers do ask for this because obviously we do have some subject matter expertise around this matter, but it's certainly keeping any firm, whether for us as a technology firm, certainly, as well as any other firm, to be making sure they have a tighter security program, comprehensive security program, because now AI can really expose vulnerabilities so much faster than a human hacker or a human bad actor. So it's about making sure the security is very comprehensive around whether if it's within a technology company or within any other firm, it's got to be a tightened security program as well as the governance around AI.
Yeah, I mean, again, for those who are in cybersecurity, the number of what they call CVEs or vulnerabilities that are discovered every year doubled in 2024 and 2025 after being relatively steady for a long number of years because of AI. You mentioned, talking very quickly in the last couple minutes here about sovereignty. You mentioned that Global Relay has gone so far as to have a sovereign data center in Vancouver. Talk to us a bit about for the audience. What would be your practical advice about this sovereign equation? Because it's certainly misunderstood or misinterpreted in some ways. What would you give as advice for companies to approach sovereignty?
I do think the advantage we have in Canada is a bit of a safe harbor from data residency perspective. We have many of our global major banks storing all their electronic communications in our data center in Canada, meaning that whereas they would never agree to storing that data in US. So in Canada, we do have this advantage of being in Canada, and the data sovereignty matters. And I think at the same time, in Canada, for us, we got to make sure that from the technology landscape in Canada, we have the right technologies, right firms, and Canadian firms supporting other Canadian technology firms for us to have a sovereign AI solution in Canada.
Yeah, that's great. And our last minute here, kind of your parting thoughts. Previous panel asked sort of 12 to 18 months. Same kind of question. In 12 months from now, if we have this conversation again, what would you like to see Global Relay have done or changed? What do you hope to be different in again, 12 months seems so far.
Yes, well, some of the products that we're hoping to launch into the market really are about, now that we have this massive amount of electronic communications that are in our data center for each firm, how do they utilize, this is the DNA of their organization, how do they utilize these communications to drive business insight? Because we are the center of capture of data for these firms, we basically have this massive advantage of how do we make sure AI has access to this and it drives business efficiency beyond risk identification or e-discovery process. So we have some really exciting products coming up in that space that we're looking to launch into the market over the next few months.
That's great. Well, again, thank you so much. Big round of applause for Sahar. Thank you. You know, we're very proud to have Global Relay here. We see you guys all over the world, and it's always a moment of pride for us.
As Mark said, a Vancouver success.
Yeah, Vancouver success story. Thank you very much, everyone.